Hey, 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 and welcome to the Black in the Saddle podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. I am so happy to have you here. If you are a regular listener, shout out to you. Also, I am so happy that you are tuning in again. Share it with your mom and them and your cousin them, okay? Because this is, I know, going to be a very powerful episode with some incredible women. And I'm super excited about it. So let me introduce you to one of my favorite nonprofit organizations that has blessed me with their time today, the CREW Urban Youth Equestrians. Welcome, Jenny, and welcome, Kenatia.
Thank you, Ariana. Thank you.
Now, I just want to start from the very beginning, because I have seen your growth. I have seen the transition from just idea and him and haw to out here doing the doggone thing, showing up at events and being vendors, and just a beautiful, beautiful program for kids. So, Jenny, would you tell us what the CREW Urban Youth Equestrians is, and how did y'all even get started?
Well, the CREW Urban Youth Equestrians is we're a nonprofit, and our mission is to support urban youth of color to learn how to train and ride horses through emotional self-reflection, self-awareness, and self-regulation.
Mhm.
Because to us, training horses, we know in the horse industry, like trainers and people have their way of doing things, and they think that is the only way to do things.
Yeah.
And we take a different approach, that there are multiple techniques that can get a response out of your horse, but the constant is always where we as human beings are at the end of that lead rope in the saddle, and our horses respond to how we are emotionally. So if we don't do that inner work,
Yeah.
and then our horses are not going to respond or be calm or whatever. And so it's just the perfect merging of working with our kids and helping them, supporting them in being okay with who they are, where they are, what they're feeling, and in the context of working with the horses. So our role as the volunteers and as the support for them is not to tell them anything. It's to encourage and open them up to all of who they are, and to open them up to the horses.
Right.
Yeah. And so how did we get started?
Yeah.
So I have two horses who are now the CREW horses, and one of my horses he was from a rescue, a lot of trauma.
Mhm.
And I was working with him, and the traditional way that I was taught as a teenager to train horses was clearly not working.
Mhm.
And so learning a different approach, which is to build a relationship and build a connection with him first. And as I started that journey, it became clear that I needed to deal with my own stuff. I have a really traumatic childhood, and a lot of stuff happened. And so if I'm going to help my horse get through his trauma, I got to get through my stuff.
Yeah.
And as we built our relationship together, I was like, I want to figure out a way to bring this to our kids. And when I say our kids, it's like I'm including my children and my grandchildren who are biracial. And, knowing that when they come to the barn with me, they would get the side eye, right? There would be the side eye or the double take or the overly niceness, the trying too hard stuff.
Yeah.
Which our kids, they feel that, and they get that. So it's like, how can we have a space where our kids feel welcome and feel comfortable and know that they're entitled to have this space. And so fast forward to the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, which happened here in
Mhm.
Minneapolis,
Mhm.
um, seeing the completely valid anger
Yeah.
and response and reactions to his murder, and then being uh, isolated from the pandemic and not being able to express
Yeah.
what they're feeling, what they're seeing, how they're doing it.
Mhm.
I was like, all right, there's no more excuses here. And so the first two women I thought of were Kenatia and her sister Chantel,
Mhm.
who known forever, and we lost contact for a little while and then reconnected through Facebook. And then like it was literally this just super fast thing.
Yeah.
Like we reconnected through Facebook, started talking, met in an Olive Garden in September, 24 weeks later, started taking in our own kids in the program. It was like that quick.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So, Kanacia, tell me, like, did you have experience with horses before joining the crew?
I have very little experience because my family own owns a farm and in deep Mississippi. And a cousin of mine who was a veterinarian took me on one of his runs, and he was playing a prank on me. I was actually terrified to the point of passing out. And with chores and things like that, no one really noticed that I disconnected from the horses completely. So I would be over there with the stanky pigs, which I hated, but I would rather deal with that than um, I was just terrified. And I'm not easily scared or anything, but this particular situation was such a put off for me. And so um, I've kind of stayed away from them. I've gone on a trail ride or two, like with the school outing or something. But
Mhm.
even then, it was like so much to like, I don't know.
Mhm.
And I always had this guilt about that too, like, oh, but they're horses, like they're horses. Who doesn't love horses? And I just felt a pull, but I couldn't name it at the time and I couldn't get over it.
Mhm.
So it wasn't really until Jenny um, reconnected with us and we started brainstorming about the crew that I reconnected. So she invited me to the first barn we were in, and she's like, just come out and meet Paprika, who's our little sassy pony. And she immediately made me lead her out of the pasture. And I was like, what is she thinking? Like, I'm terrified. And this is the cutest little pony. Like she is not by any means terrifying, but I felt it deeply. And Paprika knew. I mean, she wouldn't leave my side. Jenny had me do an exercise where we were matching steps, and she literally synced herself with me, and she like just really went out of her way to show me that I'm okay, you
Mhm.
know, I'm okay, you're okay, and I'm here with you. Like she's affirming me. And um Jenny would say, oh, she's doing this. That means she really has a lot of trust with you right now and she feels really safe with you. And after that, I would say my wall completely started to crack and just one brick at a time fall down. And so I would say that my experience took a major halt when I turned about 5. And then now I'm kind of at the level as our kids in terms of the horsemanship training. Like I'm just picking all this stuff. Some of it is making sense now from when I was a kid. I remember some of the things we would have to do, but
Mhm.
still, I'm so far removed that it's just new. So I'm gonna just call it new.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
little journey.
Well, I love that. I love that because a lot of times people think that in order to, make a difference, or in order to have something to contribute to these kinds of spaces, you have to be an expert. You have to, have all the certs and all your little letters behind your name. You have to, do all the trainings and all these things. And it really doesn't require all of that. It simply requires someone being willing to
Yeah.
learn and willing to share that experience. So that's
Yeah.
that's really cool. So I know that your sister is on the board as well. Does she have that same kind of revelation later in life, or is she just fearless?
She's just fearless. But she also didn't have that trauma either. But
Right.
still, um, her nature though is like, if I say I'm gonna do something, I'm all in. I mean, she might call me on the back end and be like, "Oh my God, I was so scared." But in terms of the crew, she's just really, especially with the horsemanship training and being present in the sessions. Jenny and I often talk about her behind her back. So we're like, Jenny is always like, you know what? She knows way more than she gives herself credit for. And
Mhm.
she really does. Like when we go out for sessions, I'm usually coming in at the end of hers. And so I kind of observe where I might join. But um, she has such a profound presence there.
Mhm.
And she really does have confidence and expertise where for me, I'm building that.
Mhm.
And, I second guess myself a lot. Just speaking to your point, I often struggle with insecurities about doing the work that we're doing and taking some of the accolades that we receive for me because I'm still so new in this journey.
Mhm.
And so dealing with that part, like, oh, but I don't know that much yet, or whatever. And people are like, oh, you guys are doing so great, or this, or like, am I? I don't.
Yes, you are. You need to claim that. Claim
Yes.
it.
Right. I said struggle. I didn't say
Yeah.
denial. I'm struggling with it.
Okay.
It's a process, and
Yes.
Mhm.
and and in the equine space, people, even if they're not experts, like to tout that they are. And um, there's a lot of ego in this space, even though
Mhm.
people say, it's not, there is, especially when you're talking about, people's knowledge of horses.
Yeah.
And so it is very intimidating for me to step in a place of confidence to be like, I know what I know, and what I don't know, I don't know. So, so I'm working with that, but
Yeah. 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 I think you said that beautifully. There's ego amongst the humans.
right,
There's ego
human,
amongst the right, it's the humans part, the industry in that way, but many of us know that when you're in this one-on-one space, or even, working in a group with kids, when you're interacting with the actual horse, there's no space for ego.
no,
Not if you want to be successful. Not
yep,
if you don't want there to be a fight. Horses don't have that ability to preserve ego. They don't think about what happened in the past, and they're not having anxiety about what's coming up in the future. Um, Being present is what's required,
yeah,
right? And that's why ego just doesn't have a space there. Um, Jenny, I would love for you to give us a little bit of insight on what it took to get the crew started. I mean, I know a little bit, but I would love for you to just share, like, what were some of those initial hurdles in starting up a new nonprofit, working with horses. I know a lot of people are really interested in how to, not that you need to list out the steps, but how did you make this idea come to fruition?
Um, Well, the first decision we had to make is, did we want to be a nonprofit or a for-profit?
Mhm.
And so we had a lot of discussions. I think we had a discussion with you. I think we had, a discussion with a couple other for-profits and nonprofits.
Mhm.
One of the very first things that we did was hire a nonprofit attorney
Mhm.
in order, and we pay her a retainer every month, and then we, are able to have consults with her as needed
Mhm.
whenever we need them. And that has been huge. She's been a great sounding board. So, from the get-go, like, we were all about, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it right the first time, and we're going to be, we're going to be within regulations, and we're going to mitigate as much risk as possible to us, to our, to the organization, to our kids, to our families.
Yeah.
And so that was the first thing. We decided to do nonprofit, more access to funding and grants, even though that is a whole different discussion. And then, when we were talking it through, it's like, the attorney was like, okay, there's this and this and this. And we're like, yeah, sure, okay. No, it's, there is a lot. If you want to do it right, hire an attorney, get a
Mhm.
good insurance agent, and hire a bookkeeper, because that money is everything. Like, how you track that money, how that money is given to you, reading your grant contracts before you accept that money to make sure that you're spending it the way you need to have that spent per year agreement. And then again, the whole accessing grant money and funding, whole different ballgame. And as a Black women-led organization, completely different. And I think it goes to what we were talking about earlier, right? Like, the whole window dressing, especially in this,
Mhm.
and that's what that's one of the things that we've encountered, is that especially within this industry, which has systemically shut out communities of color,
Mhm.
which in society and in this industry has systemically erased the culture and the history of communities of color, or have whitewashed it,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So then it's like the murder of George Floyd happens, huge response, huge reaction. And so this particular industry, right, like, putting window dressing on, we're going to have equity and diversity,
Mhm.
equity and diversity councils, putting, Black and brown faces on panels. And yet when we come and apply, and it's not just us, so we are very much into building relationships. There's an abundance of funding,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and the whole structure is set up for us to compete against each other.
Yeah.
So when we come to get funding, right, it's like, we're competing against other organizations if it's a national fund,
Mhm.
but it's like, we have to prove ourselves as what we're going to use our money for, how we're going to be responsible for it, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's a challenge. It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
Is getting that funding and being a Black women-led organization, and coming up against, are you going to put the money where your mouth is? Are you going to follow through
Yeah.
with what you say you want to see? And we're chipping away at it, at least a little bit.
Mhm.
Showing up and showing out, being there, and having our kids be able to, when you're doing a table, or they meet a new person who comes through for a tour, and having our youth, having our kiddos,
Yeah.
7, 8, 9 years old, be able to spout off what they're feeding, why they're feeding it, who this is, whose that is, how you do this or how you do that. It's like, wow, they're really
Yeah.
learning a lot of stuff. They know their stuff,
Yeah.
so it's great, and it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I know funding is a huge conversation in that it is that competition for resources. And a lot of people, a lot of organizations just want to do the work, right? They just want to fulfill what their mission is about, but that kind of that back end support and the rat race and constantly needing that, it's something that needs to be considered before starting, right? Like, what funding sources are you going to look for before starting a nonprofit?
Yep, absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah, you think, oh, this is a great idea, so people are just gonna like give us money or give you money. No, not how that works.
No. And then, sometimes when you are promised money, like you said, reading those contracts and looking at the stipulations that are attached to it. I was on some of these panels, and I worked on some of these diversity um programs, or what do they call it? Like just a group of people that are supposed to help them make
Cohort?
decisions. Yeah, something like that. Helping people develop grant programs. And I'm looking at the requirements, like, this is conducive for a very specific part, a very specific type of organization, one that was created out of a for-profit business, because they already have the establishment, they already have it's a requirement for you to have 2 bathrooms. What? Like, the barn, many times we don't own the barn. Like, what?
Yeah.
So then that immediately knocks out majority of the people, right?
Yep.
Majority of the organizations. So I completely get it, but you have been putting in the work and showing up regardless. And so speak to me, and Kenatia, you can, share also, what does it look like for you all, getting into the community and really sharing what it is that you are doing so that you can reach the kids that you want to reach?
I can go first. What it looks like, number one, I just want to say that we did a lot of research, and we were very intentional about who we chose to connect with, because that is also a huge important factor. Just speaking to anyone who's looking to start a nonprofit, being selective about who you're partnering with and how you leverage those relationships is very, very important. And so, we're all connected in our communities. We're all pretty good at trying to keep pulse on what events are coming up that would benefit from us being there, or vice versa. And we share that with each other via text or email, and then we have quick discussions on what we think. And is it a situation where us as board members go out, or is it a situation where we should bring our kids or our horses, like, so how it looks varies on what the event actually is. But even in those events, we are intentional about where we show up as well. Like, we're building a brand, and our brand serves children, and our brand serves children who are Black, Indigenous, children of color. So people's reputations, people's agendas matter to us, because they don't all have our kids in mind. And what we subject our brand to matters. And so I would say it looks, for the most part, it looks like we get out there, we try to include our families as much as possible, because it's not just about us and our kids. Our parents are such a huge just partner in all of this. They
Yeah.
provide the rides, they provide money, they do a lot in this space as well behind the scenes. And so having our families be a part of what we're doing, I just came up with this little tagline like, join our herd. And it's corny, but still at the same time, one of the things we emphasize when we're training with the kids is, you know, we are part of our horse's herd, and vice versa, they're welcoming us into their herd. And
Mhm.
so when I think about our crew, this is our herd. And it's very important that we understand who we're inviting in and what their role is in the herd and what we're all doing collectively. So
Yeah.
community events, I think by now people know the crew. They know. And there's an excitement about the crew and what we provide, because it's not commonplace in the cities, and in Minnesota in particular. It is such a class, it's a class like thing to be around horses or to have
Right.
horses. Down south, it's not so much. Everybody has access. It's there
Right. Right.
because it's such an agricultural space. But in Minnesota, um, it is seen or perceived as a wealth thing or a
Mhm.
white thing.
Mhm.
So people get excited about knowing that their kids could have access to these very magical creatures. And so we do have a waiting list and all that.
Oh, what?
We got some good problems, they ain't all bad. but,
Y'all
but yeah.
better.
Jenny, I'm tagging you in.
Oh, okay. So to build on that, because I was like thinking, oh wow, how am I gonna add to all of that? I think to Kenatia's point is our intentionality from the get-go. Like we were very, very clear from the very beginning at that dinner at Olive Garden, what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And there are some non-negotiables. One of those is we are very intentional about the volunteers who work with the kids are all BIPOC. Except for me at the moment, because we're doing the volunteer training. But as we build our volunteer base and everyone is, on the same page, we have a volunteer handbook and manual that is in flight. So we are like, my goal is to step out. I love our kids so much. And we all want our kids from the time they step out of the car with their families at the barn, that they see themselves. And we actually, one kiddo, she's 10, she comes out, she turns the corner and one of our volunteers is there and she's just like, Mom, she looks like me. The power of that, right? So many programs, and that makes us unique in Minnesota. Because so many programs, either they'll have a urban youth day, right? Or they'll have like a day where the 10, 15 Black and brown kids from the cities come out to the barn and ride the horses. And everything they see is white. It's a white barn owner, white horse owners, white volunteers who have the knowledge.
Yeah.
So do they leave that space that I could be a horse person? No. They're like, that's for white. That was kind of fun, but that's for white people. So that's not for me.
Right. Or I'm only in this space because I was allowed.
Yes.
Because they invited me.
Yeah. Amen. Exactly. And so we acknowledge that, right? And we are intentional, and we have had those uncomfortable conversations with a few allies who were like, oh, I can't work with the kids. I don't want to work with you. And we're like, all right, then, because that's your ego, right? Are you really doing this because you want to work to support an organization that is making a change? Or are you doing this to assuage your
your guilt,
Right.
you know? And
Right.
so that's okay. Because we have, we continually are training volunteers. So we're in a good place. But I think, as Kenatia pointed out, our kids are everything to us. And we will do everything we need to do to keep our kiddos safe.
Yeah.
And we also know, because our, longer term goals are that our kids will ride, that we go on field trips and we expose our kiddos to different disciplines, different competitive disciplines, different career opportunities. And we know that if they choose different competitive disciplines, we don't necessarily have the experience and training. So they'll be going into spaces that with a white trainer or a white instructor.
Yeah.
And so having what we have at their roots, right? And having those roots be deep and strong. So when they go out to that other place and they're faced with some stuff, that they know in that moment that the crew's always got their back and they can always, we got them.
Yeah.
And they will have that confidence and they will have internalized that, no, I have a right to be here. You can't push me out.
Yeah.
I know this, right?
Yeah.
And it's, it's powerful. And so, yeah, every step we take is intentional and for the benefit for our kids, no matter what.
Yeah.
And they know it.
Yeah. 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 I think, my brand brain is like coming in. I think that it is so important for this level of integrity and intentionality to happen at the beginning. You see now, different organizations who are, they've been around for a while and it's like, okay, let's have like the BIPOC day week, or let's offer this many seats, this kind of scholarship situation. But they're not able to sustain that type of commitment because it was never ingrained in them in the beginning. They never had those intentions in the beginning for everyone to feel welcome. I'm, been doing a lot of research lately, and it's that I don't need to only feel included. I need to feel like I belong. And working with these kids to make them feel like they belong in a space is so much different than just saying, hey, you can come for this day. You can come for this 8-week session because we have a scholarship, someone paid for it. It's different. It's different. And so, going a step beyond inclusion, that puts the responsibility on the environment, right? How do you create a space where kids belong? And that is something that I believe that you all have been masterful at, because it was, ingrained in the foundation, in the very original framework of your organization. So
well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank
really.
you so much.
Now, tell me a little bit about your kids. I mean, and you don't have to like say names or anything, but what have your kids looked like? What has their experience been from like the very beginning, and it's like you just get to walk a little paprika around, to now, they're saying what the horses are eating and able to describe what their experience is versus just existing there. What's that been like?
Kenatia?
Well, now this is the part where I cry a little bit because first of all, my background is in education. So I spent 20 plus years in education before moving to the state with housing. And so human services has always been a part of my life, and especially kids, especially our kids. And when we first launched, I had an injury, so I couldn't participate physically until like a month or two later. So we launched in March. I couldn't come to the barn until May. When I came, one of my coworkers signed her two little girls up, and I mean little, they're tiny at
Mhm.
this point. And I come up, and the younger one, she goes, and they're of Dominican descent.
Mhm. Mhm.
"Ah, I'll take you on the tour. I'll show you everything." Oh, okay. Okay, let's go then. So they knew the grounds, they knew what the barns were called. At the time, we had two horses, Paprika and Samir. They knew them, and they went to the pasture, sat at the tires, and literally just hung out. And I was moved by that because, again, I'm dealing with, whoo, there's a lot of horses up in here, and y'all little, what y'all doing? um, and it was a beautiful scene. Samir just walks up and nibbles, and he still does that till this day. Just nibbles on their helmet, lets them know, he's kind of protecting and engaging with them, and they were just completely at peace.
Mhm.
So some of the kids come thinking they're going to ride the horse, even though we try very hard to be intentional about naming what it is we'll actually be doing so they don't have the disappointment of that.
Yeah.
They still come. Some of them still think, oh, we're going to ride the horses. And so they come, and most of them don't have any background with horses. So they're very new in this space. Um, to see the excitement that they have, especially when one of the horses comes up on them, and they're like, "Whoa, hey!" Um, it does something to me because you can see that exchange
Mhm.
between the horse and the kid, and it's like love at first sight, and it's like, dang, look at this! Like, we really doing this? We're doing this. and then and then to fast forward to, like Jenny said earlier, hearing them spout out their intelligence and their expertise. They're the SMEs and the subject matter experts in these situations. So whenever I'm doing a tour and it's during a session, I always engage them because I want the adults and the kids to see, number one, hey, this kid is like my age and they know all this stuff. They're just doing this stuff, and
Mhm.
the parents to see the value in the program itself. Look at how confident these children are. Look
Yeah.
at I mean, they're brilliant anyway, but just how smart they are in terms of the horses and their horsemanship training. Why that horse is just licking that ball of crystal. Well, it's not crystal, it's salt.
Mhm.
And here's why they're doing that.
Yeah.
And it makes me so incredibly emotional because, number one, I know that every day is not sunny skies for them. I know that they go through several things, not all traumatic. I don't want to put that on us either. They're not all traumatized, but just life is happening.
Yeah.
And for children to have a space that they literally call their own. I observed one of the girls saying, Those are our horses out there." Immediate goosebumps because I didn't have to tell them, these are your horses. They belong to us. This is all of our. No, they know.
Mhm.
And that knowing, it runs so deep for me because, just like Jenny said, when we send them into these spaces that they want to be curious about or they want to learn about, that confidence piece is very important because the way other people are will most certainly try to chip away at that. Um, it is very difficult for white people to think of Black people or any other indigenous or person of color to be equitable with them.
Right.
Even though they may say that the reality of that challenges their own freedoms
Mhm.
and right to live the way they have been allowed to live since they got up in here. So um, it that confidence piece and that knowing piece is so deep to me because when they show up, they'll know without a shadow of a doubt that they own whatever space they step into.
Yeah.
Whether you welcome me or not, I own this.
Mhm.
And to watch our children exemplify that and take that and really hone in into that space and their voice and their platform to have that voice, it's empowering.
Mhm.
And Jenny, I would talk with her because she is a white woman. Her perspective, it comes from a place of privilege and confidence and knowing and support. Mine is usually surviving and fear and uh, masking.
Mm.
So when she's empowering the children to have a certain voice, I would literally feel the fear grip, like, hold on now, hold up, because
Yeah.
that is not safe for us.
Mhm.
So we had the hard conversation of that, our perspectives, because it's not healthy to hold on to that fear either. Although it's important to have a level of vigilance because it really ain't safe, you know.
Yeah.
But how do we find the balance? How do we empower them and consider what the world is like for them, you know? So we are doing that work as well. And like I said, when I see how they show up with that, it floors me. Like, ego where? I'm out. And I really don't have much of an ego, but when it comes to them, it's like, oh, what do I know? How do I even deserve to be around them?
Yeah.
They're so amazing. They're
Yeah.
so amazing. And then our horses are like they're the champions, okay?
Mhm.
They really are.
Yeah.
So,
That's
Jenny.
awesome. Jenny, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, a little bit, because as Kenatia, as you were talking, like a few examples, like hit me. One of which is Saturday. So we have three young ladies, ages I think 8 to almost 11.
Mhm.
They've been coming for about a year, and they like they just come together. They're there for 3 hours. We combined their sessions so that they could spend time together and become friends. They're friends. And they just like, I need to go to the, I can, at first we have someone go with them so to ensure their safety as far as, saying door so you don't get run over by a horse, right? Being,
Right.
but now it's like, yeah, go here, go there. And then down the road from our barn, there was like a fall festival, an apple orchard. So the owner of the barn, like, we all hopped in the four-wheeler and she drove us down there. And so then we all had lunch and apples, and it's like, I just looked at Kenatia and I'm like, these are our dream girls. Because this is the embodiment of what we dreamt about a year and a half ago. Like being completely comfortable and knowing that they own this space, as Kenatia said, and just the fluidity and the not needing to check in with us anymore, to just say, I'm doing this or I'm doing that.
Yeah.
And my granddaughter's playing with Legos in the background, so just FYI. And and for the impact that we have on youth who maybe aren't able to come for consistently for a year, or coming through one of our partner organizations, even in those short amount of time, we have an impact. We work with a charter school in St. Paul, and our point of contact there, I asked them to send an impact statement, and I was like completely floored by what they had to say, which was that the CREW has an impact on their school attendance. Like, it's been a struggle for many of the youth, the students that participate with us, to come to school on a regular basis, but they're there on Tuesdays and they want to come to the horses. And one young woman who came, and she did not know anything about horses, she's in 8th grade, was like, you could just see on her face the fear. she has like come out of her shell and reaches out and has emailed me directly, like, what can we do? And like, so even it's just to, as Kenatia said, it's humbling. It's like, it's just an honor to be on this journey with our kids, because what horses can do when you're open and when you build that relationship with them, it will take them so far, whether or not they keep doing horses or not, right? And we talk about the multiple careers. We use you as an example so many times. Do you see our logo? Do you see these books, right? Like, this can be you. So even if you don't want to do horses like directly or compete or train, if you just like horses, you can make a career out of this. Because look at what this young woman has done. This young Black woman has like built this, and she's a podcaster. And so, yeah, you are always at the table. So you are always around.
I'm trying to keep it together. Okay. So I'm not saying nothing.
It is true. It is because you are a role model to our kids, right? And having the books that you've created, that you've written, that you've illustrated, like all of that, so our kids can see it. It's tangible.
Yeah.
You can do this.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I really appreciate that. So tell me how we can support you. What are the ways that the Black in the Saddle community can support the CREW? Anything you got coming up? We'll do like website and socials later, but what is it that you're looking for support for and with and all that?
Do you mind if I jump in? Oh,
yeah, because I'm sitting with how I want to say or I want to ask. But yeah, you go.
Do you have it formulated, or do you want a little bit more time and I can jump in?
You jump in.
Okay. So I think, funding, right? So donations are great. And, one of the things that I think we've tossed around, and I think maybe I talked to you, Ariana, a little bit about, is what we were talking about earlier of if, the whitewashing and the window dressing that happens, right? And the hard push. I am like all for, so this is like a longer term goal, but I'm all for us building our own table, right? If you don't want to give us a chair to sit at this table, we can build our own table. We can make our own. And I would love in like, whenever, right? I would love, because we have a community, right? So yeah, I'm like totally blanking on everybody's organizational name. So we have a community, and it's a Facebook community, and it's a strong community, right? So what's stopping us from having our own horse show, right? Our own national horse show. Do it somewhere in the Midwest so everybody has to equal distance, right?
Right.
But what would that look like? You got the Bill Pickett Rodeo that does that but like having a multidisciplinary national horse show for Black and brown equestrians. Like, wouldn't that be like
dope?
So I would love to do that. So if as you're listening and you want to support that and you want to help, or you want to join in and like start building this coalition of doing something like that. Yeah. So our kids can show off because we're not the only ones doing this.
No.
Right.
And there's a need for this, right? There's a need for what we're all doing. That's the thing, is that we are all doing this. And we have, and it's you, Brittany, Aaron, right? Michelle, you all started this like 2 or 3 years ago, right? I know this, like, and I've been like following and just kind of, and so it's possible. I mean, if we can do this in 24 weeks, all of us
Right. You
together,
could do
shoot,
anything.
yeah.
I wanna point out something you said made me think of this, but sometimes we get so like inundated, with this industry, and we're talking to people and we're making connections, and we get to know so many people in the industry, and sometimes it gets to the point where we feel like we're surrounded by people doing what we're doing.
Yes.
But in reality, it still ain't that many. Like, just because we feel like there's a lot of people around us doing it. And this is something I have to remind myself of often. Like, just because this many people do it, like the scale, you have to look at perspective. Like, nationwide, me knowing 150 people doing something does not mean that it's frequent, does not mean that's a lot. And so there's still that need. Sometimes we get blinded by that, whether or not we need to show up this way or need to do this, because we feel like it's saturated, the market is saturated. And it's like, no, that's because we're looking from our own lens out versus looking at the bigger picture and honing in. And so just to your point about coming together, and like, there are a lot of organizations interested in this kind of work, but there could always be more. And there could always, not everyone has the same intentions, right? Not everyone has that same foundation, and some people are coming in on the back end, they've been around for a while. Okay, cool. But there's never not enough of this cultivating relationships with horses that empower kids to have that self-awareness, that self-confidence, and that presence. I mean, you're not only teaching kids how to be around horses, but you're teaching them public speaking skills. You're teaching them how to communicate with adults, which is hard. Adults don't even communicate with adults. Like, there's so many other skills that are happening. It's just not, it's never enough. And when we talk about support and where it should go and how to make things happen, I don't ever want anyone to feel like, oh, well, there's 5 people over there doing it, so why should I, kind of thing.
I hear you. I totally hear you.
Kenatia, did you have anything you wanted to add?
That was actually, and Jenny and I often joke about being on one accord. That was what I was trying to formulate, was the ask of how to bring the collective community together. Because we are, like you said, we are actually still pretty isolated around the country, and so
yeah,
I see a lot of amazing things happening, but not in the collective. And that's the part that I wanted to ask. If your platform could pull out a "Ayo" to the community, to put our minds together and leverage, what we all bring, and and for our kids, for them to see. Because I can't think of his name. If he's listening, please don't be mad. But he is a clothing designer, and a friend sent me an article because he designed equestrian gear for Black youth down in Atlanta. And I reached out to him. He's like, yeah, we do a big like picnic and play polo and different things in Atlanta. It's a huge fundraiser. And he was so humble and so sweet. And he was extremely busy, but he took a second just to say, you guys should come out. It ain't for the kids though. It's for the grown and sexy. So you
I know.
might want to,
I'm trying to show up next year.
we might need to. So I just said, how do we, when I think about our communities, one of the biggest complaints is, oh, everybody, want the family discount. Um, I don't want to leverage people for a family discount. I want to leverage people for the possibility for our kids to see what's possible in this industry, for us to see what's possible, for us to do collaborations,
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of things that other people do all the time.
Yeah.
What can we do? And this is not just for Black folks. This is for the whole BIPOC community. How do we show up together stronger and in mass so that there's that power and fortitude and just love in the space? Like, how do we do that for our babies? That
Yeah.
was my ask.
Yeah. 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 I've um just been doing a lot of working with horses, not riding. Well, I do leadership development with them. And one of the things that we always tell our clients, now I work with corporate entities, and we tell them that a horse's one thing that they know for certain is that they're better together than they are apart. It's just, it is part of their DNA. It is part of their being. They know this so much so that if there is a member of the herd that wants to go off and you know be out of place and just do their own thing, lead mare will be very aggressive. Like, if you leave, like, you need to leave, or you need to stay here. You need to, it is safer for us if you do not go away, right? She is very aggressive with it, and going out and visiting the wild Mustangs that I visited a few weeks ago. It was really like, it was really apparent how that was natural to them. And so, not saying the aggression of the lead mare when someone leaves needs to be like a thing, but like understanding that as we come together, I mean, we as a collective are part of a herd, and knowing that we're better together than we are apart. Another thing is, herds have family bands. So you can be in a family band and you can have your own goals and your own mission, but understanding that the herd, if we all need to move, we all need to get to safety, all the family bands come together and move, versus leaving 3, 4, 5 over here off to fend for themselves. That's just not how horses work. They, when they feel safe, they spread out. When they feel like they need to protect each other, they come together. And I feel like we're still in that process of needing to build and come together and protect each other, and support one another and see where those collaborations can happen. So I absolutely will be sharing, more with my network. I actually have I need to post about it later, but we have fireside chats every first Tuesday of the month. So there will be one tomorrow. And we are going to talk about that, talk about that interconnectedness and collaboration, and understanding how we can continue to work together, because we do get isolated. Just being focused, sometimes it's not on purpose,
Right.
but being focused on our own little section of the world, we forget the opportunities in other places. So Thank y'all so much for spending time with me today and hopping on Black in the Saddle. You know, this season is really about community, and it's about or talking to the people who have taken this idea and actually brought something to fruition, whether it be a nonprofit or whether it be an equestrian space, clothing line, like you mentioned. I'm gonna need his contact information. But I just really appreciate you all spending time with me today. Um, Jenny, do you want to share or first off, do you want to share any other words before we go over our socials and where the Black in the Saddle family can find you?
No, you two are so eloquent, and like it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I'm like sitting here just yes.
All
Heart
right.
is full. So no, I have nothing to add at all.
Well, let the people know where they can find you. If you have any events coming up, let the people
So you can find us on our website at www.thecrewurbanyouthequestrians.org. We are on Facebook at the CREW Urban Youth Equestrians, and then Instagram and TikTok at the CREW_equestrians. And please, please, please go to our TikTok, because we have like, I think we're up to 20 followers. So it would be really awesome to have some more.
I'll be number 21.
Okay, thank you.
That is awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jenny. Thank you, Kenatia, again for spending time with me today. And we will be part of your herd. It will be part
Thank
of your
you.
herd.
Thanks for inviting us. We love you so much.
Yes.